For 6 episodes, you have learned to read one instrument. A gauge swings into the red, and you know the air itself is trying to kill you. Too much carbon, too little oxygen, too much heat. You trust that rule now. Watch the readout, and you'll know when to be afraid. So look at it here. Carbon dioxide, 180 parts per million. Not the highest you have ever seen, the lowest. Less than half of today's 420, the emptiest the air has been in millions of years. And it is completely physiologically harmless. Your lungs will not notice a thing. So you relax. That is the mistake this era is built to catch. Because for the first time, the killer is not a gas you breathe at all. It is the one line on the readout you have spent 6 episodes ignoring. The temperature, and the proof that a human can survive here is exactly what will get you killed. People lived in this world, your own ancestors. You will assume that means a body like yours can. It was never their bodies that survived. So what does the coldest version of your own world actually look like? You step out where Chicago will one day stand. There is no city, no sound of one coming. There is a wall. To the north, filling the whole horizon, a cliff of ice 3 kilometers tall, higher than any mountain in the Alps, and it does not end. It runs east and west past the edge of everything you can see. Why is it here over ordinary middle latitudes? Because you have arrived at the last glacial maximum, the deepest cold of the current ice age, when an Antarctica's worth of ice sat on top of North America. The same swing that piled up that ice pulled the sea down with it, locked on land, 400 feet of ocean simply gone. And in front of the ice, steppe, flat, dry, wind-scoured grassland running to the horizon in every direction that isn't white. Not one tree. You turn a full circle looking for a single trunk, and there is nothing taller than your knee. So where does a cold like this actually reach you first? Not your core, your hands. Within minutes, the wind has found your fingers, and the blood retreats from them to protect your heart, and the fine control goes. You watch your own hands stop doing what you tell them. This is the body triaging you, spending your fingers to keep your chest warm. What stops that? Fire. It is the obvious answer, the one your whole species is built around, and you turn to make one. And here's the first thing the steppe takes from you. There is no wood, not a fallen branch, not a dead shrub, nothing to burn, because nothing tall enough to burn grows anywhere you can walk. The single technology that stands between you and freezing needs a fuel this landscape does not contain. So you start doing the arithmetic every warm-blooded thing out here does without thinking. You are burning calories to make heat faster than you could find calories to burn, and the one lever that would break the equation, a fire, is lying nowhere on the ground. You wait for morning, because cold is a thing you wait out, isn't it? Every cold you have ever known broke by noon or by spring. Find shelter, last the night, and the world warms up around you. Not this one. The geologist Peter Clark and his colleagues dated this exact interval in 2009. The last glacial maximum was not a hard winter, but a hard age. The ice at its fullest from roughly 26,000 to 19,000 years ago. 7,000 years. The treelessness you are standing in is not this month's bad luck. It is the steady state of the world for longer than all of recorded history laid end to end 4 times over. So the clock you were counting on doesn't exist. There is no morning that thaws this, no season that ends it. The absence of fuel isn't a gap between forests. On this whole cold, dry, low-slung planet, it is the landscape everywhere for millennia. But why no trees? Really? Cold alone doesn't strip a planet bare. There are frozen places today thick with spruce and pine. So walk south, out from under the ice, and surely you'll find your forest. You won't. And the reason is the one number you dismissed at the door. The botanist Joy Ward has grown modern plants in air held at glacial carbon dioxide, 180 parts per million, and watched what happens. Most trees and broadleaf plants run a photosynthesis called C3 that, at this concentration, begins to choke on its own chemistry. The CO2 is so scarce that the plant starts burning oxygen by mistake. Instead, a wasteful backfire called photorespiration, and its growth collapses. 180 parts per million isn't merely thin plant food. For a forest, it is near the floor of what a tree can live on at all. So the empty landscape snaps into focus, and it is worse than cold. The world is brown and treeless, not because of where you're standing, but because of what you're breathing. A global scarcity of the single gas trees are built on. There is no south to walk to. The whole atmosphere is starving the forest at once, and the fire you need has nowhere on the planet left to grow. So is this a dead world then? Starved? Empty? Finished? Look again. The steppe around you is not dead, it is teeming. And the reason is a loophole in the very chemistry that killed the trees. Jim Elleringer and Thuris Erling have read, in the isotopes locked into ancient teeth and soils, how grasses run a different engine. C4 photosynthesis that concentrates carbon inside the leaf and barely notices the thin air. On starvation rations of CO2, grass wins. So the low carbon that emptied the forests filled the plains, and onto that grass walks a bestiary evolution has never repeated since. Woolly mammoths, cave lions, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, and among them, hunting them, fully modern and entirely at home, people. Your own ancestors, warm inside sewn hide, beside fires fed on bone and dung because there is no wood, eating the grass secondhand through the animals that can. Here is what that costs you specifically. You are standing in one of the richest larders in the history of the planet, and you cannot open it. The sea has dropped so far you could walk from Britain to France on dry land. The archaeologist Brian E. Coles named that drowned country Doggerland, and the Sahara is not desert but grass. The whole map has been redrawn in your favor, thick with meat and passable on foot, and none of it is the slightest use to a body that can't keep its own hands working. So it comes down to your hands in the end. They stopped working an hour ago. The wind has not dropped and will not. It pours off 3 kilometers of ice, and it has been pouring for 7,000 years, and it does not know you are here. You are the least cold adapted large animal on this entire steppe. No fur, no fat layer worth the name, no sewn clothing, no fire, no shelter dug into the lee of a hill, none of the 10,000 years of handed down technique that every other human on this plane is carrying, and you are not. Your body is a tropical body. It was always a tropical body. The heat leaves you the way it leaves everything from the outside in. First the fingers you have already lost, then the feet, then the shivering, violent, burning the last of the calories you had no way to replace. Then, strangely, warmth, the false warmth at the end, when the vessels give up and open and you feel almost comfortable and you want to lie down in the grass that feeds everything here except you. So you do. So how did anyone live here at all? Not with a better body. The people on this steppe wore the same tropical animal you are wearing. No warmer, no furrier. What they had was everything. Your body isn't. Fire carried as embers when there was nothing to light, needles of bone to sew fitted clothing, shelters banked against the ice, and the knowledge, handed down and down, of exactly how to spend a frozen world without letting it spend you. Survival here was never biological. It was a technology, and you arrived without it, and it all turned on almost nothing. Pull back to the readout one last time. The whole of this, the ice, over 2 continents, the drowned coasts, the vanished sea, a world remade into steppe from pole to tropic. All of it is what 100 parts per million of carbon dioxide does when it leaves the air. 100, downward, built an ice age. Since our ancestors burned the first coal, we have shoved that same number more than 140 parts per million the other way, upward, faster than the planet has ever moved it on its own. We have run the experiment in reverse and harder. You came here certain you could read the danger because you had learned to watch the air. The air was the one thing in this whole world that could not hurt you. Everything else could. And the only reason your species ever walked back out of it is that it was carrying what you forgot to bring.